Derby County centre-half Eiran Cashin looks set to be moving to Brighton and Hove Albion before the transfer deadline on Monday evening. Now for me, there's a lot that we need to talk about with this deal. The importance of it for Derby County, if we look back at former youngsters, how this deal stacks up against it, and what we might see in return when it comes to that fee. Now obviously there's a wide range of injuries going on at Derby County at the moment, so the money would be well needed in order to bolster the squad and improve the quality in the building at the moment, which would ultimately help Paul Warne put up obviously a relegation survival charge, as well as potentially build for obviously a potential relegation where we could have better players to come straight back up. Now obviously there's been a lot of rumours going around where it goes to the fee, potential medicals, and what players we may be bringing in with that potential money should it come in from Brighton and Hove Albion, and that's what we're going to talk about in this video. So if we just get straight into it then, obviously Eiran Cashin's deal to Brighton and Hove Albion, it looks set to be a reported fee of £9.5 million with add-ons potentially reaching up to 15 million. And for me, I think that's a really good deal for Derby County. I think if we go back through the history of Derby County and we talk about players like Max Bird, Jason Knight, Louis Sibley, even go as far back as Will Hughes, we never usually seem to make the most of our academy products and the potential money that we can recoup from obviously not only their development but also the experience they play with Derby County. Obviously Eiran Cashin has spent the last essentially 2-3 years with the first team, obviously stepped in January of 2022 under Wayne Rooney, and in my opinion has gone from strength to strength. Now there's some big flaws in Eiran Cashin's game, which is one of the reasons why I'm not necessarily against him moving on. It's one of those for me where I believe that some of those flaws in his game may not be able to be taken out, and that's something which obviously can be passed on to Brighton and Hove Albion. But for me, it's an excellent deal, around 15 million all in if we get those add-ons, which for me, it's an excellent fee. You look at McGuinness, who went from Cardiff to Luton, that was around £12 million. And you look at some other youngsters who have moved around in this January window, and I think it sort of is in line with where it should be, in my opinion. I think we've actually, if that is the fee, I believe it's much better than I sort of anticipated the club to get based on our history. Obviously, when we talk about youth, you look at the money we missed out on for Max Burr. There was a rumoured £5 million bid not long after he came into the first team. Obviously, Jason Knight, there was around £8 million rumoured from Brighton or Burnley. I can't actually remember. Then obviously you talk about Louis Sibley. There was a £7 million bid from Leeds United. You go as far back as Will Hughes, and we spoke about that a few weeks ago when it went to obviously the rumours around Liverpool, Man United, Barcelona that were all keeping tabs on him, and obviously those deals never came to play. Now obviously we spoke about fees. Now let's get into the medical. Now there was lots of reports yesterday morning. I say reports, it mainly came from the forum, and there's been no official confirmation that Eiran Cashin was set to have a medical with Brighton yesterday. Now Paul Warne rebutted that and essentially said that as he was aware, he was set to train that morning and obviously would have been available for the game this weekend. I say would because at the moment we don't know if he is going to be. Paul Warne made it clear that obviously one phone call can completely change that decision. He knew that there's bids in, but he hadn't been made aware of any bids being obviously accepted or rejected sort of thing. And it's one of those for me where he quite easily could have trained yesterday morning and then gone for his medical in the afternoon. There's nothing to suggest that that didn't happen. Obviously, we won't know until it's either announced that he's gone or the club announced a bid's been accepted or things like that. Now, I do think we have to be careful with these obviously rumoured fees and rumoured medicals. Obviously, it is coming from mainly the forum. Yes, the person who is reporting this, SE Corner Ram, does seem to get a lot right. Doesn't necessarily mean he's right on this one though, because we've heard a lot about Cashin over the last few days, and ultimately to have that straight rebuttal from Paul Warne, in my opinion, shows that a bid hadn't been accepted, which is obviously one of those things which things can get changed in translation, and maybe a bid has been accepted but Warne hadn't been told before going into the press, so he didn't let it leak. But obviously we don't know, and obviously it's a disappointing loss to lose a player of the calibre of Eiran Cashin, but ultimately, in my opinion, it's not necessarily a bad one. If the rumoured fee, according to the forum, is correct, Derby County have spent, what, a quarter of that over the course of the 2 transfer windows so far. I think we've spent £4 million maybe. Selverson 800k. Zetterstrom was 1.5, Kenzo was 600, and Ibu was 500. So we can do a lot with that money. And in my opinion, I think that a hold-up could be Derby County getting a replacement lined up and ready to go. Obviously, Paul Warne mentioned in the press yesterday he was set to talk to potentially 3 players, one after the press, one after the team meeting, and one potentially in the evening. Obviously, there was no guarantees he'd have those phone calls, but that's what he was hoping to do. So it's one of those for me where maybe the Eiran Cashin deal is being held up by Derby County being able to bring in a potential replacement straight away. Obviously, with our injury list, Nat Phillips being out, Callum Elder, you look at Curtis Nelson as well. Derby County only have Matt Clark and Eiran Cashin, so if we don't have a replacement through the door, it looks like a potential Jake Rooney and Matt Clark centre-half pairing on Saturday, if Cashin was to go, that is, obviously. So obviously the important thing is that Derby County know they need to get players through the door. I don't necessarily believe that Eiran Cashin going or staying makes much difference on what business we're going to do. I think the business we do if he goes will obviously be to a much higher standard and a much better quality, which obviously then will help the squad in a much needed relegation battle in the Championship. Now, obviously you can let me know your thoughts down in the comments, but I believe there's a range of different positions where Derby County need bodies. You obviously look in the wide areas with Corey Blackett-Taylor going down, Caden Jackson not really performing, Barkhazer not really in Paul Warne's plans, and then Mendes Lang not really lighting the world alight sort of thing. So I think we need at least a winger. You then go into central midfield. We probably need another sitter. Obviously, there's been talks about Dan Barlassa. We also need another creative number 8 who can score goals and make things happen. Obviously, the rumours of Oscar Frullo have been sort of put to bed because Utrecht aren't letting him be recalled from his loan, and Frullo doesn't particularly want to come to Derby County, which I can't necessarily blame him for, given the type of football we play. You obviously then go on to the left-back position. Callum Elder looks set to be out, and obviously Craig Forsyth is sort of in that position where he may have to play centre-half. So it's a bit of an interesting predicament Derby County find themselves in that position, where it could end up being Tristan Gill playing left-back in a couple of weeks, should Callum Elder pick up a more longer-term injury, or Fozzie pick up an injury and we don't have fullbacks available, sort of thing. So there's those interesting discussions that are going to be going on behind the scenes. And then obviously the most important one is that centre-half position. If Eiran Cashin is to go, that leaves us with only Matt Clark fit. Phillips is supposed to be back in training on Monday, but obviously we know what Derby County are like. He might also not be. So it's one of those where we probably need at least one more centre-back before this transfer window closes, if not 2, to cover the potential loss of Eiran Cashin, potential injuries and things like that. And obviously, you've obviously got them discussions of those youth academy players, which we've got, like the likes of Dan Cox, Kai Robinson, Darren Robinson as well, obviously Jake Rooney as well, who ultimately could potentially step into those positions, as well as Craig Forsyth, Ryan Niambi, David Ozo, Ibu Adams did a decent job a couple of weeks ago. Wasn't even a couple of weeks ago, it wasn't that long ago at all. So it's a big discussion which needs to be had regarding those positions. And obviously what happens in the transfer window. Obviously, if Eiran Cashin does go, it's going to be a very disappointing move, but one which I think is a positive for the club rather than a negative. And I think that's the way that we have to see it as fans, because I think there's a lot that Eiran Cashin's move would help us do, especially in adding quality to the squad. It would change the pot of players that we're working in. Now, if you have not done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and hit the like button. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. If you haven't done so already, check out my video yesterday previewing the upcoming game. It's going to be very interesting to see how Derby County set up versus Sheffield United, given all the transfer talk and injuries in the building. Let me know your thoughts down below, and I'll catch you in the next one.